Under the shimmering lights of Hollywood's most glamorous era, Jean Simmons became a figure impossible to overlook. She didn't need dramatic gestures or loud performances. Her power lived in the quiet intensity of her presence. Audiences fell in love with the elegance she brought to Spartacus, the restrained fire she carried in Elmer Gantry, and the delicate vulnerability that defined her role in Guys and Dolls. To millions, she was the picture of composure, a woman whose poise felt almost untouchable. But behind that calm, captivating exterior lay a story few ever suspected. There were days when she slipped away from set without warning, moments when she admitted privately that she could no longer summon the emotion her roles demanded. She smiled for the cameras, yet beneath that serene expression was a silence shaped by wounds she kept hidden from the world. The public saw only the beauty and the brilliance. They never heard the quiet unraveling happening just beyond the reach of the spotlight. So what truly unfolded when the applause faded and the lights dimmed? And why did someone so gifted, so adored, begin to drift into a silence that no one could explain? Long before she slipped away from public view, Jean Simmons was celebrated as one of the most captivating talents of her generation. Emerging from the shadows of a post-war Britain, she carried with her a kind of quiet brilliance that Hollywood couldn't ignore. Filmmakers admired the precision of her craft, critics praised her emotional clarity, and audiences found themselves drawn to the subtle expressions that made her performances unforgettable. Her ascent was steady and graceful, marked not by noise but by an undeniable depth that set her apart. She became the actress whose presence lingered long after a scene ended. In Spartacus, she brought a calm strength that steadied the film's intensity. In Elmer Gantry, she navigated inner conflict with a measured, haunting resolve. And in Guys and Dolls, she delivered charm mixed with a vulnerability that made the story glow. Newspapers called her refined, timeless, effortless. To the public, she seemed like someone who had mastered the world she lived in. Yet those glowing headlines only told one side of the story. Beyond the acclaim and admiration, something delicate within her was beginning to fracture a quiet tension that grew with each passing year, unnoticed by the audiences who adored her. Behind the fame, something was gently coming undone. Jean Simmons grew up in a world still marked by the uncertainties of post-war life, a world that seldom offered young women the freedom to dream beyond what circumstance allowed. Yet there was something in her quiet, perceptive, naturally attuned to emotion that made her stand out long before anyone knew her name. Acting was not a lifelong ambition. It arrived unexpectedly, almost by accident, when she was still a teenager. But from the moment the camera captured her, it was as if she had always belonged there. Her early performances revealed a depth that startled seasoned directors. She possessed an instinctive ability to communicate unspoken feelings, to let a single glance suggest an entire lifetime. Without theatrical gestures or exaggerated expressions, she could shift the tone of a scene simply by entering it. Hollywood took notice quickly. Suddenly, the girl who once doubted her place in the world found herself receiving offers from studios thousands of miles away. Yet her rise was not without doubt. The industry demanded maturity, discipline, and confidence she had not yet fully grown into. Long days on set left her questioning whether she could carry the weight of expectation placed upon her. There were moments when pressure made her hesitate, when insecurity whispered that she might not be enough. But every time she reached a breaking point, a breakthrough followed a role that revealed new layers of her talent, or a performance that resonated far beyond what she imagined. With each milestone, Jean stepped closer to the luminous figure the world would one day celebrate. She was becoming someone extraordinary, shaped not only by the opportunities she embraced, but by the quiet resilience she carried within her. As Jean Simmons reached the height of her success, the brilliance that surrounded her came with a cost she rarely spoke about. Hollywood adored her restraint, her elegance, her quiet emotional power, but each of these qualities demanded an internal discipline that slowly wore her down. The industry's expectations were unyielding. Every gesture had to be perfect, every expression controlled, every interview polished. What the world admired became the very thing that kept her tightly bound to an image she struggled to maintain. Her marriage to Stewart Granger, celebrated by the press as a golden pairing, carried a strain invisible to the public eye. Those close to the couple recalled long periods of tension and the unspoken heaviness that filled their private life. There were times when Jean would step away from the set without explanation, disappearing into solitude as if overwhelmed by something she could not name. Hollywood dismissed these moments as temperament, failing to see them as signs of emotional fatigue. The demands of her career consumed nearly everything: her time, her energy, her sense of personal space. Endless filming schedules and promotional tours left her with little room to rest or rediscover herself. She began declining roles not because she lacked ambition, but because she felt hollow, unable to bring the emotional truth that had once defined her artistry. She confessed quietly to a few trusted friends that she could no longer summon feelings on command, a revelation that revealed just how much the pressure had drained her. In giving the world her best work, Jean sacrificed pieces of herself no one ever thought to ask about. The public saw only her composure. They never saw the internal struggle behind it. She paid for her fame not with scandal or missteps, but with a slow erosion of the emotional strength she had once held so effortlessly. Jean's decline was not marked by chaos, controversy, or public collapse. Instead, it unfolded in a way that mirrored the very essence of who she was: quiet, internal, and painfully understated. The shift began in small ways, almost imperceptible to those who only saw her through the screen. She would lose her focus during scenes, drifting away into thoughts she never shared. She would leave the set without a word, not out of defiance, but as if her spirit needed distance from the demands pressing in on her. Scripts continued to arrive with roles that once would have thrilled her, but something within her had changed. The deep emotional reservoir she had always drawn from now felt depleted. She admitted privately that she struggled to feel anything at all, a confession that revealed a profound exhaustion she had carried silently for far too long. Hollywood, swift, demanding, and always hungry for the next sensation, shifted its attention to fresher faces, leaving Jean's fading presence unnoticed by an industry that rarely looks back. Behind closed doors, her inner world grew heavier. Friends spoke softly of letters she wrote during these years, pages filled with reflections, too somber, too intimate, to ever be shared publicly. These writings held pieces of a woman who had given so much of herself to her craft that little remained untouched by fatigue. There were moments when she withdrew completely, seeking refuge in spaces where no one expected her to perform or pretend. By the time audiences realized she was appearing less often, Jean had already begun her retreat. There was no dramatic farewell, no final burst of publicity, only a quiet turning away from a world that had demanded more of her heart than it knew. The lights didn't go out all at once. They dimmed slowly, gently, until she stepped into a silence that felt more honest than anything she had known in years. In the years after she stepped away from Hollywood's demands, Jean Simmons embraced a quiet existence far removed from the chaotic rhythm of the industry that had shaped her youth. There was no grand announcement, no headline declaring her retreat. She simply allowed herself to fade from the public eye, choosing moments of solitude over the relentless attention she had once endured. For the first time in decades, she lived on her own terms, not as a star, but as a woman seeking a gentler path. Her public appearances became rare and carefully chosen. Friends remembered her turning down invitations to award ceremonies that wished to honor her legacy not out of resentment, but because she no longer felt comfortable standing in the glow of the spotlight. She had given the world more than enough, and recognition, however well-intentioned, no longer aligned with the peace she sought. The silence she chose was deliberate, a boundary she built to reclaim her sense of self. In these quiet years, writing became an intimate sanctuary for her. She filled notebooks with thoughts she never intended anyone to read, reflections shaped by introspection, sorrow, and a lifetime of unspoken emotion. Her daughter would later describe these pages as too heavy to revisit, a glimpse into the inner landscape Jean had guarded from the world. Through her words, it became clear that she had carried far more pain than she ever allowed others to see. When her final days arrived, they came softly, without spectacle or fanfare. There was no dramatic final scene, only the gentle passing of someone who had lived in both radiance and shadow. To those who loved her, the true goodbye had come much earlier on the day she chose silence over performance, and peace over expectation. Jean Simmons left behind a legacy defined not only by the unforgettable performances she gave, but by the quiet dignity with which she carried her life. Her work remains a masterclass in emotional subtlety, proof that an actor does not need grand gestures to leave a lasting mark. Generations later, viewers still find themselves captivated by the depth she conveyed with the smallest shift of expression, the way her silence often spoke louder than any line of dialogue. She became a symbol of an artistry rooted in truth, restraint, and a profound understanding of human emotion. Her colleagues remembered her not for theatrics or ego, but for the calm steadiness she brought to every set. Directors praised her rare ability to create intimacy with the camera, to let audiences into inner worlds without forcing the moment. Even now, her performances feel timeless, delicate, yet strong, understated yet unforgettable. In an industry often dominated by spectacle, Jean's presence remains a reminder of how powerful softness can be. Her withdrawal from the public eye added an air of mystery that continues to shape how she is remembered. The unanswered questions, the reflections she kept locked in her private writings, and the emotional battles she carried quietly, all of it deepened the reverence people feel for her. Those pages she left behind, described as too sorrowful to revisit, suggest a woman whose inner life was far richer and more turbulent than the world ever realized. Today, Jean Simmons stands as a figure for those who understand that greatness does not require noise. Her story endures because she lived with intention, choosing boundaries over expectations and authenticity over applause. Her name continues to echo through film history, not just for what she did, but for the grace with which she stepped back when the world expected her to continue. She remains a testament to the beauty of restraint, the courage of silence, and the enduring power of a star who shone brightest when she stopped trying to be seen. Jean Simmons's life story lingers long after the spotlight fades, a quiet, haunting reminder that even the brightest stars carry battles unseen. Her journey moves between two worlds: the admiration she earned through performances shaped by extraordinary emotional honesty, and the deeply personal silence she chose when the demands grew heavier than her spirit could bear. She shone with a rare kind of brilliance, one built not on spectacle but on sincerity, and yet it was this very sensitivity that made her vulnerable to the pressures around her. Her decision to retreat from fame was not a disappearance, it was an act of self-preservation, a final reclaiming of the peace she had been denied for so long. In choosing distance over exposure, she left behind a legacy that feels both powerful and profoundly human. Her story asks us to reconsider what success truly costs, and whether recognition is worth the parts of ourselves we might lose along the way. Jean's life stands as proof that even those who seem strongest may be quietly carrying more than the world ever imagined. What stays with you most from her journey? And if you could speak to Jean today, what would you want to tell her? Thank you for watching, and for allowing her story to live on through your reflection.